Welcome to the CareCast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Matt. So for today's podcast, we're going to go into a couple different topics. But first, we're going to talk about how we got into game development.
How we got into game development. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. How I got into game development. So I got into game dev like I imagine a lot of other people did. I'm just a big fan of video games, grew up playing them, so I naturally wanted to make some of my own, because through playing all these games, I had my own ideas for the cool, awesome game I could just picture in my head and wanted to see it be made. So I think that's how a lot of people start their foray into game development, is just their love for video games. So that's pretty much how it started. There's no special super secret reason I got into game development.
Okay, so, well, when you were younger, did you ever make any games?
Not when I was really little. I didn't have the capacity to do so. I'd say the first time I actually made a game was in high school. I guess it was like a pilot program or something to get the school into programming. But it was a very small class of students who were studying how to use Visual Basic for Microsoft. So that's what they started us on, and then taught us a little bit about Visual C#, which I don't remember a whole lot about, but I believe they were quite similar in that they both offered resources to make video games pretty quickly rather than coding stuff from scratch. Actually, I don't remember what the final project was in Visual Basic class. But I do remember making a calculator application and tic-tac-toe and stuff like that. So it planted some roots for game development. In the Visual C# class, the final project was to make a video game as complete as you could. And I had made a small kind of knockoff version of Defend Your Castle. Are you familiar with that game?
I'm not.
It was well, I'm sure you can still play it today, but it was a flash game on albino black sheep where little stick figure dudes would walk towards your castle, and you had to like click on them enough times to kill them. Otherwise, they'd reach your castle walls and start banging on them, and you'd lose HP. And so I made like a very simple stripped down version. I remember that my castle was just the Mario castle.
Oh.
I took just assets from that and made little stick figures in MS Paint, and it was a quaint little thing. It's pretty cool to see that being made, and a lot of people in the class, since we all shared games with each other, thought that my game was pretty cool. And I don't know if I'll include this in the podcast. I don't know if I told you or not, but that final project was graded on a curve, and like programmers naturally are lazy, but like that class, like I think I was a junior, but it had like a couple freshmen, a good chunk of sophomores, and then like some juniors, and maybe one senior or something. But like fucking nobody made a working fucking game that looked halfway decent. It was fucking ridiculous how just god awful everybody's fucking game was. There was this one dude who made a game where like I think you were trying to save people from a burning building or something, but it looked like shit. Like it was just stick figures drawn in Photoshop or whatever, and the background was like solid blue, and I think he had a gun or something, and like I just remember the character sprite like repeating the sprite over and over. It wouldn't like properly update, so you just had like stick figures strewn all over the place.
Oh my gosh.
It's just a friggin' clusterfuck.
That's awesome.
And oh god, the thing that gets me though was that there was this really smart kid in the class, like brainiac programmer or whatever. I don't know, maybe he looked some shit up on YouTube to seem impressive, but the dude made a chat application from scratch for the class. So it was like an executable
Uh-huh.
that you could pull from the class server, and like people could chat on it.
Wow.
But this dude couldn't even be bothered to make a fucking video game. Like he didn't make anything.
Wow.
You know, I take that back. I think he made something that was like the roots of something pretty impressive. Like it had smooth animation or something, but it wasn't a complete game. So, like, you know, it just wouldn't qualify as finished for the project.
Yeah.
But like, what ended up happening is basically all the class got Fs because my project got a perfect score
Oh my god.
because it was like the only complete game in that class.
Wow, that sucks. So I get was everyone pissed at you or
No, I don't think anybody realized, so they didn't give a shit.
okay, they were just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, I don't think anybody cared.
Yeah, they probably just wrote off the class.
There was only one guy who got like a B minus, who had a game or something. I don't remember what it was, but you know, it was kind of B minus material. But he at least made a fucking game, and everybody else just like got zeros basically for the project.
Jesus.
We had a lot of time to fucking make it though. Like I was having my friend in the class like test it out, check it out, you know, see if there were any bugs or anything. You know, and I was doing that for like a week or so, and everybody else is just dicking around playing on emulators and shit in the class.
Oh yeah.
So that was fucking great.
Yeah. It was a pretty similar experience in my first like game design class, where we did game maker projects for the final thing, and mine was the that platformer that I showed you a while back, where it ripped off like sprites from Mario and Final Fantasy and stuff. And it was, yeah, I was like, I mean, it probably wasn't as bad as the ones in yours. They're like, I feel like most of the games are like passable, you know.
Yeah.
Ugly or buggy as they were, you know.
Yeah, like, you know, in programming classes, the games don't have to look all that impressive. Nobody's expecting you of that.
Right.
If you can, then, you know, big ups to you. But everybody's expecting everyone else's game to look like shit, kind of run like shit. But if it at least like works and there's gameplay to it, then you're golden.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also assuming you don't fucking steal a Unity project.
Eesh.
So that was fun in the Visual Basic and Visual C# class, and it was the first time I had actual hands-on experience programming something and like designing video games. Before that, it was all just, you know, me thinking about, oh, you know, it'd be cool if we had a, you know, a shooting game that was an MMORPG, this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was fun. It was a good experience. It was fun sharing what you created with your fellow programmers, and I'd say it was those classes that instilled an interest in programming for me. Because I like all parts of game design, I'd say. Maybe except for art, just because I'm not that well equipped to deal with it. But I do like me some programming. It's one of the more frustrating parts of game design, but I'd say it's equally rewarding when you pull it off and everything clicks and works.
That's cool. So Sounds like it was a pretty good experience for you. Um, but what about a little bit later? Did you have any more kind of games as school projects that you made?
Nah.
Okay, well, I guess that's it then.
Yeah, yeah. So your turn. Yeah. So from high school, I'd say the next development, no pun intended, in my game dev history is in community college. I think it was maybe not the first year, but the second year there. I took some programming courses in C++, which I think was a lot more difficult for me at the time because it just wasn't something I was used to create all these different classes and structs from scratch. If you know anything about C++, it's a lot less forgiving than Visual Basic was. So anything and everything you wanted in that game, you had to program yourself, which was a lot more work. But I think because of that, it was a lot more rewarding because every single aspect of the game that you wanted, you made sure it worked, and that felt good to know that. Yeah, that monster I coded in there and those attack stats and all that, I made that. It wasn't anybody else's doing.
So, what games did you make?
Nothing. I didn't make anything really special. I think because that class also had everybody making the basic programs first, like a program that adds two numbers or a program that solves the towers of Hanoi problem, or kind of uh mundane junk like that first. But when it came time for the final project, we were given carte blanche to do whatever we wanted. So um I worked with one other guy, and we had made a RPG in the Windows console. So it was all text only, ASCII art, this kind of stuff. And um, to be honest, I don't think it actually worked, but when it came time to present, it worked enough, and we got a good grade on it. So
Nice.
yeah, I think so. It was the game was basically display some ASCII art and then give the player some options to enter. So you'd enter one for option one, so on and so forth. And so you'd go from a town and you could go to a shop, or you could go into the forest. And I think it was like the forest area where the actual battling was going on. That wasn't working because we'd output this grid of cells to move to, and it would update your position based on your input. But when it came time to the random battles occurring, just something went haywire. But I think we got one battle to work,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was a win for us. It was something like just the enemies would not stop spawning, or it'd be spawning way tougher enemies than you were supposed to fight in the first forest. And like you were fighting giant robo mechs in the first beginning forest when you should have been fighting spiders and skeletons and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, we were a little tongue in cheek with our with like our weapon names and our enemy choices. It was supposed to be kind of a more silly RPG.
That's
Like
awesome.
there were go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's awesome.
There's a town that's like level 2, I guess. So there'd be town fighting area, town fighting area, town fighting area. And the second town, I believe, had an outhouse that you could just visit.
Mm-hmm.
And you could look in there and the player would just say, yuck, gross, or something like that. So so really no point to it, but it was just fun to program stuff like that in there.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I can definitely relate to the feeling of like presenting something to an audience and knowing that certain aspects aren't going to work properly or avoiding those aspects. And
Yeah.
it makes me think like all those game developers that present their games at like E3, like how there's got to be like a lot of times where something doesn't work and they know it and
Hmm.
they're like avoiding that, or they're just praying that everything's going to work properly, like, so I feel like we can all relate to those folks now.
Yeah. If you haven't done that as a programmer, well, big ups. Then you're a hard worker who makes sure
Yeah,
their program works the day of presentation.
yeah, you've earned the best programmer ever award.
But it just seems like it's destined to happen. Even if you check it beforehand, something's going to go wrong during the presentation. So it's almost like not even worth preparing for.
Yeah.
So after that big hurrah with the console RPG, I went on to university and took a couple. Took a couple. What the fuck am I talking about? That was a shit ton of programming classes.
Here and there, a little bit of programming.
Yeah. I went on to university and I was going for a degree in computer science. So there were a lot of classes that had to do with programming, but I wouldn't say they had a lot to do with game development or game design. I'd say only a couple really did. Um, and one of them was a class tailored to game design, specifically making games in the Unity engine, which is why it's now my engine of choice for making video games, just because I'm the most well equipped in that engine. Um, but in that class, that's where I met you.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. So yeah, we met in that class. I think it went something like I just walked over to you and one other student and said, "Hey, you guys want to make a game?" And I think that was it. You just said yes.
Yeah,
We
that's
didn't know.
pretty much how I remember it too.
We never knew each other or saw each other from any other classes. Um, I just went to the first two people I saw and said, "Hey guys, want to make a game?"
Yeah,
I'm sort of down to business like that. I kind of um, get tired of the whole, okay, let's all break into groups and spend 30 minutes meandering trying to find people that we're going to like, or like trying to hook up with our friends in our group and then find one other person. No, I'm not about that. You just assign us groups. Just, it's more about just getting to the point. Just you form your team, and that's who you're working with. Because I kind of feel like that's how quote unquote real life works. You don't get to choose your coworkers. You just whoever they are, you have to work with them. And if it's game development, you got to work with them, and you got to get this game done. You don't get to uh, usher your friends in to work with them.
yeah, that's a good point. Um, and yeah, I'm glad you take that perspective, because I agree, but I'm not going to be the first one to go ask somebody. Like, I'm kind of more like, I would wait to see if anyone needs a group. So
Hmm.
it was like a good match, I think.
Yeah, because I know, like, if I don't get up and ask people to join my group, I'm just gonna be sitting there waiting for the people who do already know each other to form their groups and pick their third or fourth person, and then I'm gonna be sitting there, and the professor will say, "Okay, who doesn't have a group?" I raise my hand, and then I'm just put into the refuse group with all the people who were left behind.
Yeah.
So might as well just skip all that and form your group. So there's a pro tip if you're ever in a game design or game development class. So we formed a group, and I remember all of us meeting in the library to discuss ideas. I don't know if it was us just being really smart or what, but we really wanted to hammer down the ideas of the game. Do you remember that?
I do.
Our little meeting in the library,
Mhm.
and we talked about. I remember us specifically talking about like what would be realistic in this engine, and what would be realistic given our 3 months or so to make the game. And given our limited knowledge, because I don't think you messed with Unity beforehand, did you?
Um, I had a little bit, but not like extensively.
Mm. And I had none, and I believe our third partner was the same.
Mm.
And I remember I remember pitching the idea to you guys of the idea of a game about a princess who goes around fighting vegetables, and her power-ups were, or wait, what was the vegetable idea your idea? Fuck, I don't
I don't
remember.
remember either, honestly.
I remember pitching the yeah, I remember pitching the idea of like a chibi princess who would go around, and she'd get powered up from eating cupcakes and stuff like that. Um, and she'd fight vegetables off because she was the sweet princess, and she lived in the sweet kingdom or something like that. And vegetables were the enemy of the sweet kingdom.
Right.
And I liked how you guys were just on board, like, yeah, sure.
Sounded good to me.
Yeah. And then it was you who did come up with the
Yeah,
name
yeah.
we stuck with,
Mhm.
Princess Dulce.
That's right, yeah.
And so we started working on that. I remember we took inspiration from games like Kingdom Hearts and what was that other game?
Grandia?
Grandia, yeah, because the character was technically a 2D sprite moving in a 3D world.
Mm.
And I remember when I guess a couple weeks after forming teams, we had to present our ideas to the class with a PowerPoint, and I don't think it was too dissimilar to trying to pitch your game to a publisher to see, uh, is this idea gonna fly, or is it just gonna crash and burn?
Yeah, it really had that feel. It felt like we were selling our idea.
And I remember that a lot of teams had some pretty lofty ideas, very far out there game ideas that um wasn't too sure if those were going to be made in 3 months or not, but give them the benefit of the doubt. And I remember us pitching our idea to to the class, and nobody seemed very impressed. Nobody really seemed on board.
Yeah, people didn't like it, I think.
And there was a poll where people voted on which idea they thought was the best, that was conducted by the professor. And I do believe that our idea was dead last, and it had 1 vote, I believe.
I can't remember the number of votes, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was dead last.
Oh, so it may have had more than one, but it was last place for best idea.
Yeah.
So that was very encouraging for our development. But we stuck with the idea that we had crafted in the beginning. We didn't change ideas or anything, which is a lot more than it seems, because the idea was that these games, when they were all finished at the end of the semester or whatever, would be presented to um, a couple of faculty and a couple of people who are in the industry. So it'd be a showcase of all our games. And those judges would vote for which games they liked the best. They'd give them all a score, and whichever team got the highest score would win the contest and also get an automatic A in the class.
Mm-hmm.
So winning that contest was very very big poggers. And so we worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
Worked on it till the very last night. I believe both of us were up until 3 or 4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to drive to school in 5 hours or so for the presentation. And lo and behold, we win the damn contest.
Yeah, we won.
Yeah, ain't that a comeback story? Lowest voted idea wins the contest.
Yeah, it felt pretty good on a petty level. I enjoyed it on that level.
Yeah. I could see their reasoning.
Yeah.
You know, you got a moe sweet princess who eats cupcakes. Doesn't sound like the best game in the world.
Yeah, and our class was full of like 17 to 25-year-old males.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's probably not going to appeal to them.
Yeah. So we won the contest, and the rest is history. No, it's not. Oh, there's too much history to go over. God damn. You know, for what it's worth, the game turned out good.
Yeah.
And maybe we should release it someday.
That'd be fun.
Just for people to check it out.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty fun and pretty sophisticated for a 3-month thing, and us not knowing anything.
Yeah.
Because you got your platforming, you got fighting enemies, and the animations you made for the sword swing and the mallet hit and all that.
Yeah.
It was and the game didn't look half bad.
Yeah, really didn't.
At the very least, it didn't have the default Unity skybox like some of the other projects did.
It's true. Yeah, it's absolutely true.
I remember harping on that from the beginning, saying, like, that needs to be fixed because that's all anybody's going to look at if that's in the game.
Yeah. Mm.
It's just this blue sky, gray floor thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you were the chief of like art and making the game not look shitty. Like that was you like the biggest proponent of like that aspect of the game.
Yeah. Because when it comes to a competition, you can have a very sophisticated game with very in-depth mechanics and stuff, but if you really want to impress, you need good not even good art, but you need good art cohesion. Like all the elements need to look like they belong together in the same game. And I feel like that's where some of those games in that contest dropped the ball, because they'd have all these disparate assets pulled from different bundles or different things on the asset stores, and then some are made by them, and it kind of is just a mishmash of things that don't match at all and don't look like they exist in the same world. But I think we did well in pulling off our kind of cartoony look, sort of a dreamland kind of landscape.
Yeah, it turned out okay.
Oh, I just remembered the game also had buying items and power-ups and stuff. So it was pretty sophisticated, not to toot our own horn, but it was a pretty darn good little RPG thing.
Yeah, it's kind of miraculous, like how much of it came together in the last like 36 hours of the project.
Yeah, that is true. But I think we were all working hard from the get-go, getting those ideas down, making that GDD. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, that GDD, yo.
Don't forget that GDD, bruh. Making the GDD, thinking about what assets we can make, which we can't. Because I remember that I had wanted an intro cutscene with animation or with 3D models animated or something, but we didn't have the know-how or the time, so I just turned it into a couple of still images, and it still had worked. Yeah, it just what's the saying where limitations breed creativity or something like that?
Through adversity, something. Yeah.
Yeah, close enough. So we were limited in what we knew how to do and what we could do, and I think that forced us to get creative with our design decisions. Just it forced us to get creative with our design decisions. Almost like a game jam, I guess you could say. A 3-month game jam, but you had 3 months to finish a game and, you know, stamp it as done and ship it.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely felt kind of jam-like, the whole experience.
Yeah. Because finishing a game is more than what some of those people could say.
Yeah.
Like if you can finish a game, you are very good at this.
Yeah. Like that's that's a step above, like, a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Like if you can make a halfway decent game that's kind of fun, kind of looks good, but it's finished and it works, oh man, you're set.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
a lot of the requirements met
yeah.
to be a developer.
So after that, I believe was the big kahuna. It was the final year we were in university, and it was like our senior class, senior seminar thing, where I believe again anybody in that class had the choice of what to do as long as it was something related to computers or computer science. And that's where Broken Silence was started.
That's right.
Hell yeah. And we all know how that went.
Oh yeah. Just leave it there. Just don't say anything else.
No, again, what we had and what we presented was good. As far as designing a game for a class, because that's of a certain caliber, and then you have stuff above it. So, I believe for that game though, or that version of Broken Silence, it was not finished. I believe only the playthrough as Marina was complete, and we only had sprites for Carl.
Yeah. I don't think we even had an ending, really.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that because we were banking on the presentation ending.
Yeah.
Which it did, and that sounds that sounds lazy and cheating, but it did free up time for us to polish the things that did matter, like moving through the room and collecting items and stuff like that. So we could put more attention towards the things that people would really be looking at and be interested in. I don't even think we had time to collect all the items. The presentation went by very fast.
Yeah.
So I remember we got a good score on that. It went over very well. But I think we weren't totally satisfied with the game. It wasn't. We just didn't have enough time and resources to really make the game that we wanted it to be. So we had to cut corners where we could and put out a deliverable to meet the deadline of the class. And so that's what inspired us to revisit the game, revamp it, and turn it into what people play today.
That's right. That's the origin story.
No radioactive spiders here.
Yeah.
And so Broken Silence was the last big programming project I completed in its entirety. I haven't pursued any other big projects since then, but I am eager to start up on something new. Get the GDD going for a new project and see how that turns out. But enough about me. Matt, how did you get into game development?
Well, have I got a story for you? It's kind of funny because I mean, a lot of it, you know, you already talked about it because we shared a lot of it, in school. But I can talk a little bit about the stuff before that. So when I was younger, I used to love RPG Maker. When I found out that they made a Super Famicom game in Japan that was like you could make an RPG with, and I downloaded the ROM and loved playing with that when I was a little kid. And then I found out that they were releasing a PlayStation 1 port or a version of RPG Maker in the US. And I was like unbelievably hyped for that. So I was like hotly anticipating the release of PS1 RPG Maker and going to the publisher's like forum every day to like see if there's any updates or people were talking about what kind of RPGs they were going to make, you know. And I also at the time loved reading Electronic Gaming Monthly, a magazine. I was like, whoa, what if Electronic Gaming Monthly had a contest for RPG Maker when it comes out? So I sent them a letter. I was like, hey, you guys should do like a contest for RPG Maker. And they did. I don't know if my letter was what caused it. I mean, I wouldn't expect them to listen to some crazy little kid, but they did do one. And I sent in my game. I finished it last minute, you know, obviously. You know, just kind of slapped it together at the end. But it got an honorable mention. It did not win because it was not very good.
Oh.
But you know, it was still pretty fun. And you know, so that was like my RPG Maker story. I also used to love playing with the build level editor that came with Duke Nukem 3D. It was like a DOS program, and it would like, so it had like a 2D top-down view and you could set up a grid of varying sizes, or you could change the size of the grid, and you would lay out like rooms, like you're doing like a floor plan for, you know, like a house or whatever. And then you could switch into 3D mode, and it would show you like from if you were like playing as a character inside that area, like Duke Nukem or, you know, the Doom guy or whatever. and you could switch back and forth, and you could like apply textures to walls and floors and ceilings, and it had this weird thing with there were like numbers, and you could tag the room sectors, and each tag, like there were defined tags that would mean that room is like a teleporter, or that room is like, you know, I don't know. They had all kinds of different tags, and like the crazy thing was, so the way that build was designed, you couldn't like have a room over another room, because it's all just like, you know, like top down, like you can't specify like two rooms like one above another. So when you had something like a pool of water, and you could submerge underneath, but that wasn't, you know, it wasn't you were actually going down in the water, you were actually like teleporting to an identical room that was underwater. So like you just copied and pasted the room, but it was underwater, like somewhere else on the map. So you're just like teleporting. But that was a cool trick you could do, you know, and it looked, you know, just seamless, like you were going underwater. So I used to love doing that, but I never like released any levels or anything like that. I just like playing with it, and it crashed all the time. Like it was terrible. It was the worst thing.
No contest for that one?
No build contest. So the RPG Maker contest was like the closest thing I got to like releasing anything before Broken Silence. Unless you count like school projects or whatever.
Yeah, releasing to the public.
Right. So yeah, like after that I took some programming and game design classes in school and really liked them. And then I met you, and we did Broken Silence, and that, as they say, is that.
Did you make any cool games in college before Broken Silence?
They weren't very cool, but I did make a platformer with reused assets from like Final Fantasy IV and Mario World and East 3. Actually, I remember I ripped off like some of the interior house tiles or whatever from that game. And it was like a platformer where the main mechanic idea that we had was like you would use your magical powers to change the weather, and that would affect the platforming. So like if it was if the wind was blowing, like that would push your jump a little bit farther, so you could jump to areas you couldn't if the wind wasn't blowing. And raining, if it was raining, it would like fill up pits with water, so you could like swim across pits or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool idea, but it, you know, the game that we released like wasn't it was just like a series of levels that happened to have like weather effects, you know. Didn't really fully implement the idea, you know, but it was okay. It was like functional platformer. So
yeah. Well, when does a game fully implement the idea you start with?
Yeah, especially for a school project, you know, it's pretty hard to do. But yeah, I made that one, and
what was that one you made in PHP with faces or something?
Yes, it's called the Rowdy Tavern. And yeah, it was PHP, and it would you were like a bartender, and you could create your character, and it would randomly generate bar patrons, and it would use like a layer system to like put different eyes and noses and mouths and hair and stuff on the character. Which is pretty cool. It was impressive to all the people in class who wanted to be impressed. They were like waiting for something cool. It's funny, actually, in that class there was a guy who also made a chat client. And he was like God, he was like ultra typer. Like he was so fast at typing, and he seemed like a super user. You know what I mean? Like he was just like insanely proficient with programming and computers. So yeah, he did really well in that class. It wasn't a game design class though, so he never had the chance to show off his skills with a game. But I'm sure he could have done a game just fine, you know.
But was he hardworking or lazy?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, you know, we didn't. The class was pretty chill, so you know, I think he was just doing fine. You know, just chilling. He seemed like he had like a day job or something. So, you know, maybe he was just taking that extra class, you know, after work or whatever. But yeah, that was cool. It was a cool class. And other than that, I think after that was just Princess Dulce and Broken Silence.
What about when you made The Last Guardian?
I mean, yeah, that was a very long project. You know, my first console game. But I'm very proud of, you know, where it ended up and the success that we had with Last Guardian. So
yeah,
I forgot to mention that one. Thank you for bringing it up.
So a lot of our gaming endeavors seem to revolve around college, university, just higher education. And that's always a question neophyte game developers have is, do I need higher education to make video games? So, do you need higher education to make games? You go first.
My short answer is no. But my long answer is that it depends on what you want to do in games. Let me explain. So, yeah, in general, I believe that, you know, there's lots of very user-friendly game engines that you can start with. And lots of documentation online and lots of helpful, you know, Discord channels and forums and all kinds of stuff. You could YouTube comment sections, stuff like that. You could probably join to get help. So, if you really want to make a game, there's enough out there where, you know, you don't have to have gone to college. But I will say that there are some concepts that you'll have an easier time with. There are some aspects of game development that you'll have an easier time with if they've been introduced to you, you know, in a setting like a university.
Such as?
Well, so one question that I've heard a lot is, how much math do you need to be a game developer or programmer? You know, most of the times they're asking about programming. And again, like, you know, I want to say, like, computer programming, the foundation of that is math, and the foundation of a game is computer programming. So it's like, you know, it's pretty important to learn. But again, with some of the engines, there's not much of a focus. You know, it depends on what kind of games you want to do, really. For most things, I would say you need some basic math from algebra on, and I say that because you know, I think every engine probably deals with variables, and things like that. So if you're introduced to like variables through algebra and the math beyond that, I think you'll have an easier time making games.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you.
Thank you.
I just agree, okay?
All right, you know what? That's fine. We can leave it there.
Do you need higher education? Define need. Like,
Yeah.
do you need it to make a video game? No. Do you need it to make good video games that are praised and make you money? Maybe. I don't know. It depends on what kind of game you're trying to tackle. But I'll say that if you choose to go to college or university or what have you, um, it does come with some benefits that maybe don't just relate to game development. Because when you go to a higher education institution, you're usually studying for programming. Because that's just the part of video game development most people go after, and it's kind of the cornerstone of video games. If you don't have programming, you don't have very much going on. And taking courses in programming and getting a degree and all that really helps you. It well equips you for dealing with problems you'll face in programming or design decisions you have to make to finish a game or stuff like that. Stuff that you're typically not going to find in a YouTube tutorial, at least from what I've seen. Like YouTube tutorials that I find will teach you a very specific thing in Unity or a very specific thing in Game Maker, but they won't dive into broader, more essential topics like gaming architecture or class architecture or stuff like that. There's probably some out there, but they're few, far between, and usually not the tutorials people go to because they're probably lengthy, very boring, kind of dull tutorials. It's very hard to make computer architecture exciting, I would say.
Yeah.
So you take these university courses, but I will say they don't teach you a lot of practical knowledge about Unity, Game Maker, or any other game engine you might come across. Some do, and they teach you about the engine and whatnot. But from what I experienced, it wasn't super in depth. It was very surface level stuff. So you might not gain a whole lot of practical game making knowledge from university studies. It makes you a good programmer, but it may not make you a good game developer, I guess is what I'll say. Like you can go to university, but you're not necessarily going to leave knowing how to make Half-Life or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to teach you how to make all those assets, like all the models and all the textures and all the music and the direction of the voice actors and the script and all this other stuff. They're not going to equip you with the skills to pull that off. What they're going to equip you with, if you study computer science, is all the programming that goes into it. So, where your art and music come from is a whole nother story. That could be from you, could be from contractors, it could be from friends, other people on the team, what have you. But you're not going to take a game art class typically in a computer science degree.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of legwork you're going to have to be doing. And I think, to be fair, a lot of students who are interested in game development, like they're curious about that sort of stuff. So they're gonna be thinking about, well, how would I make a Half-Life, or
Yeah.
going into the source code or whatever. So yeah, it's not going to be handed to you in college, but you can pick up a lot of stuff that's important there.
Yeah, from what skills you pick up, you could definitely go on to make a game. But to make a game, a lot more skills are required that include art, writing, music, stuff like that.
Design,
yes. Just because you can make a level in Unity doesn't mean it's necessarily good or fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go to university to learn a thing or two about games and make you a better programmer. But I'd say another point in its favor is that if the whole video game thing doesn't pan out, whether you're just an unsuccessful game developer or you find out you really don't like game development, you'd rather be doing something different, you could take that you can take that degree and apply it to something else computer related. You're not just pigeonholed into game development with a computer science degree. There's plenty of career you can pursue with that kind of degree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to end the cast, and it's a great bit of advice to give to anyone who's like, thinking about getting into game development.
Hey, I wasn't fucking done, bruh.
Well, that's it. That's for the CareCast. Thanks for listening, everybody, and see you later.
I was only halfway through my
See you
notes.
later. We're done here. See you later. This podcast uses a song called Bossa Antigua by Kevin MacLeod, found at incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0, and the URL for that license is creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0.